Pastor's been talking about SOZO all year long. And so what was really funny is the day he talked to us about SOZO, I was like, is that like WWJD? Is that an acronym for something? I had grown up in church, but I never heard SOZO before. So I got SOZO shamed. And so once I got past that and realized what it was, I really connected with what God has for us. Because here's the thing, sozo is a Greek word. If you don't know what it means, or maybe you're new, it's a Greek word that means to save, heal, deliver, make well, or whole. It's being fully restored in the spiritual, emotional, and physical. It's a wholeness. So sozo life is not like a storehouse, because here's the thing, God doesn't give us sozo in a warehouse that we have to go back and get. He puts it in a storehouse where it's available to us immediately, where we can go and get it. It's right there. You don't have to go to the back. You don't have to perform. You don't have to do things. You don't have to be in right standing. No, it's available to you. It's available to you. So we're in the book of Joshua, and last week Pastor left off in chapter 5 of Joshua, where the Israelites were in preparation. And so this chapter signifies a transition period with the new generation of Israelites and the renewed covenant with God. So they've been traveling. They have been promised that they're going to the promised land. And so here we are in chapter 6 that they're about to break forward. But the first thing they have to do is they have to get through Jericho. They have to get through Jericho. And so when Pastor told me, hey, do you want to take over chapter 6? I'm like, you set this on a tee for me. This is the climax. He's giving me the climax to be able to share today. I'm so excited because this chapter speaks to me. And in chapter 6, verse 1, it says, now Jericho was tightly closed because of the sons of Israel. No one went out or came in. The Lord said to Joshua, this is in verse 2, see, I have given Jericho into your hands with its king and mighty warriors. Verse 3, now you shall march around the city, all the men of war circling the city once. You shall do this for 6 days. So these men of war, they're men of war. They're suited up. They're like ready for a battle. And they're being told, hey, we're not going to do that. We're just going to walk laps. We're just going to walk some laps. And we're going to do that once a day. That sounds fun. Let's get our steps in. Hope you have your Apple Watch. We're going to see how many steps it takes, and we're just going to walk circles. And so I can only imagine if you're a man of war, what that might have felt like. What was God? I can't help but think, what was God doing inside of them as they're walking circles? Maybe God was humbling them. Maybe God was speaking to them. Maybe God was preparing them for something. I mean, how many of you guys have ever felt like you've walked circles around something over and over and over again? That maybe the same issue keeps coming up. Or maybe you think, got past one thing, something else comes up. It's you're walking circles around and around and around. So Pastor OJ said last week how one of the greatest tactics of the enemy is the power of sight. I mean, how often is it that you see something in your life that looks daunting, and that becomes your truth? Because Satan can disorient you if he can convince you with your sight that something's really bad. And so then, this is what happens. The thing that you're walking in circle around can sure have the power to create doubt in your life, because what you see isn't changing. So we're going to address 3 key areas today, and the first one is doubt. We're going to talk about the agreements that we've made with doubt. And doubt is not the product of faith not working out. Doubt is believing the negative evidence is true. With doubt, you're looking for evidence that God doesn't care. The lens that you're looking through is distorted. You're not trying to find Jesus. You're trying to find how Jesus has failed you. So when we have doubt in our hearts, when we have doubt, we let that penetrate our hearts and it becomes real to us. That's the lens that we're looking through, that God must have failed us, that the thing that we've been praying for didn't work out because God failed me. Well, if we know the word, then we know God never fails us, does he? So, and here's how I know, because in Hebrews 13:5, these are Jesus' words. He says, I will never desert you, nor will I forsake you, or let you down, or relax my hold on you. So some of you have an overdeveloped, cynical muscle that needs to be crucified. Do I need to say that again? Some of you have an overdeveloped, cynical muscle that needs to be crucified. Because here's the thing, he's never left you, he's never forsaken you. Let that settle in. It's a simple truth. He's never done that. All right, so let's get back to Joshua. Joshua chapter 6:15. Then on the seventh day, they got up early at daybreak and marched around the city in the same way 7 times. Only on that day they marched around the city 7 times. Joshua 16, and the 7th time when the priest had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Verse 17, the city and everything that is in it shall be under the ban to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid and protected the messengers whom we sent. Fast forward, Joshua, no, actually, I'm going to sit here for just a second. So Rahab, a lot of you know, or maybe you didn't, that Rahab is in the lineage of Jesus. She's in the lineage of Jesus. And I don't want to miss this because, yes, she's a prostitute. And that, man, there's a story there just in and of itself, right? But here's the thing. She's in the lineage of Jesus. And so last Thursday, I was actually talking to Pastor Kim, and I said, you know what? When I get to heaven, one of the first questions I'm going to ask him is, I always read in Scripture, maybe it's just one verse that I've read in Luke that talks about how Joseph, because of Joseph, it was in the lineage of Jesus. And she goes, I think you need to research that a little bit more. So I did. And what I realized is that both Mary and Joseph were in the lineage of David. Both of them. And so whenever King David, he had several children, but 2 of them, one of them was Solomon, one of them was Nathan. And so Solomon was in the lineage of Joseph. Nathan was in the lineage of Mary. So they were actually distant cousins. Thankfully, Jesus didn't come with like a 6th finger or something, but I appreciate that he's in the actual lineage and is in the seed of Rahab. So Joshua, verse 20, it says, so the people shouted the battle cry, and the priests blew the trumpets. When the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they raised a great shout, and the wall of Jericho fell down. And now this is only half the verse, so I want to stop right here. So faith is something that we're convinced of, but it's something that's unseen. And so you guys can argue my theology all you want, but experience a lot of times speaks pretty loud. And I have my own experience with Jericho. So in 2023, things were a little bit rocky for me. I was a single mom trying to make ends meet, doing all the things. I was working here and things were going great, and the Lord had opened up a door for my son to be able to go to a private school. And my daughter was finally at school age, and I thought, I cannot afford to send 2 kids to private school. Lord, I need a miracle, but I know this is where they're supposed to be, but I need a miracle. And I had just heard a message about the wall of Jericho and physically walking 7 laps around the thing that you're praying for, the thing that you're believing. And God spoke to me about that. And he said, you know what? Go walk your Jericho and take some other miracles with you to be believing for at the same time. So I took my 2 kids. I brought them with me. We walked around that school 7 times. 7 times. And on the sixth lap, an angel came down and spoke to me. Just kidding. That didn't happen. But on the 7th lap, nothing happened. Nothing happened, but it was 4.17 miles in case you're wondering how much we walked. And it was on January 25th, 2023. And we walked 4.17 miles together with me and my 2 kids. So we got in the car. Nothing happened. But I believed that something in the spiritual had broken. And I believe that act of moving forward and walking my Jericho, something in the spirit happened. Something broke. Some unbelief, some doubt that I had broken. And God was doing something in me. And so 2 things that I had been praying for, well, there were 3 things that day as I was walking those 7 laps that I was believing for. One of them was that I was going to be debt-free. And I thought, well, that's a miracle. How in the world is that going to happen? I wanted to be debt-free, and I wanted to have a certain amount of money in my savings account. Well, my grandmother calls and says, I don't know why, but the Lord has told me that I'm supposed to give you some of your inheritance early. And I'm like, okay, all right. So she writes me a check, and it's the exact number that I needed to pay off my debt and the exact number that I had been praying for to set aside in my savings account. So then I had applied for my daughter to go to this Christian school, and I wasn't even sure if she would get in because there was a waiting list, and she got in, and I thought, cool. She got in, but how am I going to pay for it? Well, that year was the year that signed into law to be able to give free choice and for the tax credit, and the tax credit covered every bit of her tuition. I'm like, all right. But there was still a third. There was still a third thing that I was praying for. There was a third thing that I was believing for. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So all of a sudden, this spirit of disappointment, he just did 2 miracles, but somehow the spirit of disappointment crept into my heart. Like, man, but that was the one I was really believing for. That was the one that I thought, that's going to take an act of God, and it didn't happen. So all of a sudden, this spirit of disappointment came in. And disappointment is believing that in some way God doesn't want to or chooses not to fulfill his promises to you. But here's the thing, if you feel disappointment, it's not something that you should feel ashamed of. If you feel disappointment, I think what the enemy tries to do is say, shame on you. You don't believe. You don't believe. But here's the deal. Even the Jews, when Jesus was being crucified, were disappointed because the man that they believed was going to save them is dying. And look what God did with that. So the spirit of disappointment is not the end. It is no indicator of how things are going to work out. But when you feel the spirit of disappointment, it's what you do with it next. Are you going to come into agreement with it? Are you going to believe he's failed me? Or are you going to say, I am disappointed, but I know you're still good. I know you're still God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they went into the fire, one of their final words before was, I know that my God is good, and even if I perish, I know he's still good. I know even if. So even if he doesn't answer those prayers exactly the way you think he would, he's still good. He is still good. So you must come out of agreement with disappointment because it will rob you and lie to you. It won't diminish the promise, but it sure can delay it. When you have a heart posture of disappointment and it becomes part of you, it can delay it. It can push it back. Because here's the deal, God isn't after how can I bless you big. He's after your heart. He's after a relationship with you. He's after you. That's what he's after. All right, so let's continue the rest of the verse. Joshua chapter 6, verse 20. So the people shouted the battle cry, and the priests blew the trumpets. When the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they raised a great shout, and the wall of Jericho fell down, and the sons of Israel went up in the city, every man straight ahead, and they overthrew the city. But here's something I want you guys to see. The entire wall, it didn't fall down. Now, my whole life, I've grown up having this image in my head, and even as a kids pastor, I think I've taught this, that the entire wall of Jericho had fallen down. And I had this image that the walls just all crumbled, but they didn't. And here, I can prove it. I can prove it right here. It says in verse 20 that it mentions the adverb neged, which means straight ahead or opposite of you. So the section of the wall that was right in front of them, when they shouted, it fell. Joshua chapter 6:22, after the wall came down, Joshua sent the young spies with instructions that they must go to whose house? Rahab's house. So if all the walls came down, but they had to go to Rahab's house, well, where did Rahab live? In chapter 1, verse 15, it says that Rahab let the spies down with the rope because she lived in the city walls. She lived in the walls. So wait a minute. If the walls came down, wouldn't she have passed away? Wouldn't she have died? Not all the walls fell. What point are you trying to make? Here's the point I'm trying to make. What happens when the promise is still hiding in the walls that didn't fall? Now the walls came down, right? What a miracle. But not all of them fell. But don't you know that the promise is still in those walls? Had to find an escape route. Had to have spies come and free them and protect them. It's still in the walls. Some walls are not meant to come down. Some walls are meant to stay up. Fortified walls are meant to stay up for a purpose. Because God's not interested in just all the walls coming down. He wants your heart. He wants you to break free of that spirit of doubt, that spirit of disappointment, and the spirit of hopelessness. Anyone ever been hopeless before? I have. Hopelessness. Hopelessness isn't a fact, though. It's a belief. Hopelessness is a belief that you've acquired. You've acquired it after placing your faith in counterfeits. Anything that isn't of the Lord. And here's the muscle that we've developed in us because we have overdeveloped flesh. When we don't get what we've prayed for, we assume God didn't come through. I heard a worship pastor say one time, if there's an area in your life you're not seeing God move, start thanking God. There's a reason why he says, enter his gates with thanksgiving. Thankfulness is in the heart of God. Something moves when we're thankful. Something moves in our heart. You have a bad situation, you're going through something really hard. Something moves in you when you have a thankful heart. So I told you guys earlier about how I walked around my Jericho and that God had answered 2 out of the 3 of my prayers. Well, there was a third one. So the third one, I wasn't going on dates at that time. I wasn't doing anything like that. I was mostly deciding that, hey, I'm going to be the absolute best mom I could possibly be. And so one of the things that I decided to do was I was going to go all in. Because I knew that God was doing something in me. I wanted him to break the spirit of doubt. I wanted him to break the spirit of disappointment. I wanted him to break the spirit of hopelessness. And so the Lord said, hey, you know what? It's time for some adventure. It's time for some fun. So something that my kids and I decided to do was we went to every single state park in the state of Oklahoma. We went to all 33 state parks, and I think I have a picture of here, maybe. Oh, okay, yep. So there's a picture of me and my 3 kids, and we are actually at the Black Mesa. If you've ever been to the Black Mesa, it's the highest elevation in the state of Oklahoma. It's so high that you can see for miles, and it's really cool, but you can go to the tri-state area, and each of us are standing in a different state. I'm in Oklahoma, and Beckham is in New Mexico, and Evan is in, what's the other state? Colorado. We're all standing in a different state. And it became this time, the next couple of years, it became this time of just a healing time for me. Because here's also what I know is that sometimes when God gives you a promise, it can become an idol to you. And if you're not careful, It will delay it. The more that you take your eyes off of Jesus and this promise that he's given you, it can become an idol. And every bit of your energy is about the thing, and it's not the one who gave you the thing. And that had to be crucified in me too, because I felt in some ways that I was some kind of victim to this life. And I wasn't. You know why? Because I'm a daughter of the King. I'm not a victim to anything. I'm not a victim. And my life is fruit of that. And I hope that people see my life and they see Jesus. That's the ultimate goal. I want them to see Jesus in that. So, at this point, we've taken 2.5 years. We went to all the state parks. We had a blast. Made some incredible memories. I've seen parts of this state I never thought I would see. We've been to deserts. We've been to mountains. We've been all over the place. If you need to know a good state park, come find me because I'll tell you. I've got a good list. So year 7 comes around, and I finally, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I'm gonna date. I think I'm gonna do that. So I go on a date with somebody. And here's the thing, this guy was so wonderful, had so much integrity, I was like, he's not my type. He's not my type. You know, it was too much Christ in him. You know, too much Jesus. I told Debbie about it, and she's like, hold on, don't get rid of this one. So fast forward 8 months. On my birthday, we were together. I should say that. We ended up in a relationship. And God did some amazing things in my heart through that time. Because I grew so much. And I had seen how powerful it is to break the spirit of doubt. Even if things take time, break the spirit of doubt. The spirit of disappointment and the spirit of hopelessness were falling away in my life. And I was seeing how it was now growing me into looking more like him and less like me. And so 8 months go by, and on my birthday, which was this past year, my 40th birthday, no less, he proposes. And I think there's a picture. I'm going to show him all. There he is. So handsome. And he proposes. I said yes, in case you're wondering. And a couple of days later, I was reminded of that day that I walked my Jericho. I was like, that was the third one. My third one was, Lord, I'm praying for the man that you have for me. And here he was. And then I thought, okay, when was it that I walked the Jericho with my kids? And it was January 25th, 2023. He and I had our first date January 25th, 2025. A full 2 years later to the date. And here's the thing, he was going through some things in his own life. God was fashioning him into the man that I needed. Had it been 2 years prior, we wouldn't have been ready for each other. God used those 2 years in his life to do huge things in him. You know, I was grossly disappointed in some things in my life, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that God left the wall up, that wall didn't come down before it was time. I'm so thankful. He had a promise for me, but the promise was in me, and the Lord wanted to do things in me in those few years. Here's the deal. I believe that some of you guys have to come out of agreement. That you all have been believing for things in your life. You've walked your Jericho, or maybe you haven't even begun to walk your Jericho. Maybe you have so much doubt and disappointment, hopelessness in your own life that it has distorted your view, your lens of who God is. So I'm going to challenge you guys today. I want to challenge you to walk your Jericho. Now, here's the Tiffa today. I want to come out of agreement with doubt, with disappointment, and hopelessness. And I posture myself for a complete and total move of God.